Synopsis. The day of the university entrance exam. My homeroom teacher claimed she had forgotten my exam admission ticket. Out of 46 students in the class, she brought exactly 45 tickets. Mine was the only one missing. At 8:55, she finally arrived at the school gates, leisurely riding her small electric scooter. My classmates received their tickets one by one and hurriedly ran toward their exam rooms. I stood off to the side, my heart burning with anxiety as I waited for my turn. When she finally called my name, she rummaged through her document folder, then suddenly paused, a look of guilt washing over her face. "Soo-won, it seems I left your ticket in the office." I froze. Just yesterday afternoon, she had come to the classroom to collect the tickets, claiming she was afraid someone might carelessly forget theirs, and that it would be safer in her keeping. The loudspeakers blared, announcing the imminent start of the exam. At exactly 9 o'clock, the blood drained from my body. The exam venue was in the city centre, while the school office was in the north. A round trip would take at least 40 minutes. The supervising teacher from our school paced restlessly, constantly using his walkie-talkie to contact the chief invigilator. Support staff checked the system and made calls to verify my identity. The security guard at the gate paced anxiously, suggesting they let me in first and complete the paperwork later. Everyone was trying to find a way to help me, except for my homeroom teacher. She stood by the side, feigning a look of worry, yet a strange glint flickered in her eyes. Taking advantage of a moment when no one was watching, she leaned in slightly and whispered into my ear. "Serves you right. Who told you to seduce my boyfriend?" My entire body stiffened on the spot. "He came to the school to see me yesterday, but his eyes were glued to you. Why pretend to be so innocent?" I didn't even know who her boyfriend was. The homeroom teacher observed my expression, the corners of her lips curling into a faint smirk. "Don't waste your effort. You're not getting in today. I have plenty of ways to ensure you won't be able to write a single word." Time ticked away on the clock, second by second. 15 minutes after the exam began, I would lose all rights to enter the room. 12 years of arduous study would vanish like smoke. The loudspeakers overhead blared again. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. Those 3 words, "serves you right," Soo-won, would remember them well. Panic was useless. Tears would be of no help. Since I was young, I had understood one truth. When others want to see you fall, you absolutely must not collapse. "Student, don't panic." The supervising teacher ran out from the teaching building, walkie-talkie still in hand. "We've contacted the examination office. Your information has been found in the system. We can verify your identity first and let you into the exam room. The admission ticket can be supplemented later." The homeroom teacher's expression faltered for a fraction of a second, before quickly returning to normal. "That's wonderful. Soo-won, go on in first. I'll handle the ticket issue." The supervising teacher gave her a look, then nodded. I followed the staff member quickly toward the exam room. At the door, I turned my head to look at my homeroom teacher one last time. She stood at the school gate, quietly watching me, her lips slowly curving upward. My intuition told me this matter was far from over. The exam room was on the 3rd floor. My assigned seat was in the penultimate row by the window. The invigilator cross-checked my ID card with the photo in the system, jotted down a few notes, and let me in. I sat down and took a deep breath. An answer sheet and scratch paper were already placed on the desk. The exam had started 10 minutes ago. My hands were still trembling. I picked up my pen and scribbled a few strokes on the scratch paper to steady myself. The literature exam lasted 150 minutes. I was 10 minutes short, but it would be enough. I breezed through the multiple choice section. The basic questions posed no obstacle for me. Being ranked first in my grade wasn't an empty title. Just as I reached the classical text translation section, the back door was gently pushed open. A staff member in a white dress shirt walked in and whispered a few words to the invigilator. Both of them turned their gaze toward me, their eyes filled with scrutiny. The invigilator nodded, bent down to pull a folder from beneath the podium, flipped through a few pages, and frowned slightly. "Soo-won, please step outside for a moment." The pen in my hand halted. I was only on question 15 of the multiple choice, and I had barely written 2 lines for the translation. I looked up at the invigilator. Her face was devoid of expression, as she simply tilted her head toward the back door. "What's the matter?" "Let's talk outside." Around me, a few candidates raised their heads to glance at me before quickly looking back down. In a university entrance exam room, No one wanted to be involved in anyone else's business. I set my pen down and stood up. Out in the corridor stood 3 people. A chief invigilator, a uniformed staff member, and a male teacher I didn't recognize. Are you Soo-won? The chief invigilator held a tablet displaying the system interface. Yes. Someone has reported you using their real name, suspecting you of taking the exam as a substitute. You need to come with us to verify your identity. My mind felt like it was exploding. Substitute test taker. The words spoken at the gate suddenly became crystal clear. You're not getting in today. I'm not a substitute. I am Soo-won. We still have to follow procedure. The chief invigilator said calmly. Someone provided report documents. According to regulations, we are obligated to investigate. Your photo and ID card initially match, but we need further confirmation. How long will it take? About 20 minutes. I clenched my fists. Can I go back to take the exam first, and cooperate with the investigation afterward? If you find any violations, I will voluntarily void all my results. No. The uniformed staff member shook his head. The report includes photos claiming you and the registered photo are not the same person. According to the rules, you must leave the exam room during the investigation. Then what if there are no issues after the check? If your identity is verified, you can return and continue the exam. What about the time? How will the delayed time be handled? They looked at each other. No one answered. I already knew the answer. The lost time would not be compensated. The examination regulations clearly stated that investigation time was not counted as part of the exam duration, nor would it be added on. That meant for every minute I spent outside, I lost a minute of exam time. Please cooperate, the chief invigilator said. I took a deep breath and followed them to the examination office. The office was on the first floor, a relatively small room. 2 desks were pushed together, holding a computer, a printer and piles of files. Examination procedures and exam room maps were taped to the walls. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly, casting a stark white glow across the room. A female teacher sitting at the computer looked up and assessed me as I walked in. Soo-won? Yes. Take a seat. I sat across from her. She handed me a piece of paper printed with my registration details, medical examination info, an English listening sign-in sheet, and a few blurry surveillance photos. These are the materials provided by the whistleblower, claiming the photo in the system doesn't match you, suspecting you're a substitute. I looked down. The registration photo was taken in the 2nd semester of my junior year. I had my hair in a ponytail, wore a uniform, and my face was rounder than it is now. The surveillance photo was taken at the school gates this morning. The angle was off and the lighting was poor. The 2 photos didn't look completely identical, but people change. Losing a few pounds in a year, developing sharper features, a different look in the eyes, all of this is normal. Let alone the fact that the surveillance photo was blurry to begin with. My ID card is in the exam room, placed at the corner of my desk. The invigilator checked it when I entered, and it has been on the desk untouched since. The teacher turned to the male staff member beside her. Go to the exam room on the 3rd floor, penultimate row by the window, and bring down Soo-won's ID card. The man nodded and hurried out. Before we get that back, you must provide other forms of identification, the teacher said, looking at me. Do you have your household registration book at home? Student ID. The school collected them. All senior students' IDs were confiscated before the exam, allegedly for unified processing to avoid affecting the graduation procedure. The teacher frowned slightly. Is there anyone who can prove your identity? I heard your homeroom teacher is at the school gates. Hearing this, I knew the outcome. The whistleblower was her. This was a trap she had carefully laid. What's her name again? Lin Min. The teacher checked the computer for a moment. Ms. Lin Min, correct? We've already contacted her. She confirmed you are Soo-won, but she said. She paused for a beat. In the past, your class had an incident involving a substitute test taker, so she cannot guarantee it with absolute certainty. I closed my eyes. Her methods were incredibly clean. She didn't say I wasn't Soo-won. She only said she wasn't sure. It sounded like she was just being responsible, but in reality she pushed all the suspicion onto me. Then we need more evidence. The teacher followed the protocol. What about your classmates? Is anyone taking the exam at the same venue? What are their names and exam room numbers? I gave her 2 names, both classmates assigned to this test site in the room right next door. A staff member went out again to find them. I sat in the examination office, listening to the steady ticking of the wall clock. 9:20. 9:25. 9:30. With every passing minute, my literature score ebbed away. I remembered the classical essays I had reviewed last night. Encouraging learning, on teachers, the Apang Palace Rhapsody. Every sentence, every word had been clear. But now, everything in my head was a chaotic mess. The words overlapped, losing their order. At 9:30 the male staff member returned, holding my ID card. I found it. It was at the corner of the desk. The teacher took it, cross-referenced the photo with the system information, and looked at me. The photo matches. She said this, but she still didn't draw a conclusion. However, the report alleges that the registration photo and the real person don't match. Relying solely on the ID card isn't enough. Did you participate in the academic proficiency test last year? Yes. Did they take your fingerprints? Yes. The teacher typed on the computer. The system has your fingerprints on file. I will verify them. She handed me a fingerprint scanner. I placed my right index finger on the screen, and the result quickly appeared. Fingerprint matched. The teacher looked at the screen, then back at me. 9:35. 2 classmates were brought to the door of the examination office. They stood in the corridor, looked in, and nodded together. That's Soo-won, our classmate. The teacher recorded their testimony in the file and continued waiting for the medical examination photo to be retrieved from the database. Only after all the documents were cross-checked did she nod. Identity verification approved. You may return to the exam. Thank you. By the time I rushed out of the office, it was 9:40. The exam started at 9 and ended at 11:30. I had lost 40 minutes. As I ran up to the 3rd floor, my legs felt like jelly. Pushing the back door open and stepping inside, the invigilator looked at me and nodded. I returned to my seat. The answer sheet was still blank for the multiple choice, and the classical translation only had 2 lines written. The essay prompt was on the last page. The topic was, overcome and overcome again. I stared at those words for a few seconds, my eyes growing hot. I tilted my head back to look at the ceiling lights, forcing the emotion down. There was no time for weakness. I gripped my pen, took a deep breath, flipped the page, and started finishing the other sections first. Literature was my strong suit. I sped through the reading comprehension and classical poetry, but my hands still shook. My handwriting lacked its usual vigor. At 10:30 I returned to the essay section. I had 50 minutes left. A standard essay usually took me an hour. I was 10 minutes short. I forced myself not to think about my homeroom teacher, not to think about what had just happened, and not to think about the lost time. Only the prompt remained in my mind. I just had to finish it. Overcome and overcome again. I wrote down the opening sentence. By the time I reached the 3rd paragraph, the loudspeaker sounded. 15 minutes remaining. My hand paused. The essay was still 400 words short. I accelerated, my cursive letters connecting in a blur. My strokes were uneven, but I didn't stop. I poured everything I could remember onto the paper. No time to weigh my words, just striving to complete it. 5 minutes left until the end. For the final paragraph, I wrote almost purely on instinct, my hand flying across the page, the pen tip pressing hard into the paper. Ding! The final bell rang. I finished writing the very last character and put down my pen. When the invigilator ordered us to stop writing, my answer sheet was filled with words. But I knew the ending was poor, the conclusion was rushed, the arguments insufficient. Under normal circumstances, I could have squeezed out a few more points with that essay. But this was the university entrance exam. As the answer sheets and exam papers were collected, I sat in my chair, feeling completely hollow. Gradually, people in the classroom stood up, packed their things, and walked out. Some were comparing answers, some laughing. All the sounds grew distant. I slowly stood up, my mind suddenly extremely lucid. Outside, the school gate was swarming with people. I wove through the crowd, found a quiet corner, took out my phone, and dialed a number. The phone rang twice before connecting. Dad, finished the exam? How did you do? His voice was very calm, carrying a hint of a smile. Literature wasn't good. It's fine. Just do well this afternoon. Dad, I paused for a beat. My homeroom teacher, Ms. Lin, took my admission ticket this morning and deliberately delayed me at the school gates. After I got into the exam room, She found someone to falsely report me as a substitute test taker, causing me to be detained in the examination office for 40 minutes. I didn't have time to finish my essay. I stopped for a moment before continuing. She also said it was because I had my eyes on her boyfriend. In reality, I don't even know the man. The other end was silent for a few seconds. I knew he was suppressing his fury. Okay. My father's voice dropped. I understand. He didn't ask for more details, nor did he offer direct comfort. He simply hung up. I understood exactly what that okay meant. My father, Su Chenyuan, is the chairman of the Su Education Group. Out of the top 3 private high schools in the city, 2 belong to him. Although our school wasn't directly managed by him, the equipment he sponsored and the buildings he funded every year far exceeded the allocated budget. Lin Min used her petty authority to mess with me. I intended to show her what real power was. The afternoon exam was math. Before entering the exam room, the supervising teacher pulled me aside and whispered, "I heard about what happened this morning. There won't be any issues this afternoon. I will be monitoring everything closely." I nodded without replying. Math was my greatest strength. My scores were always at the top. I usually finished the multiple choice and fill-in-the-blank sections in 40 minutes. For the free response, as long as I nailed the final question, I could get a perfect score. When the exam paper was handed out, I skimmed it once and already had a plan. It wasn't difficult. Compared to the mock exams, it was actually quite manageable. I started on the multiple choice. Question 1. Question 2. Question 3. Everything went smoothly. But when I reached question 8, and was about to bubble in my answer, an invigilator walked over. "Recalculate this question one more time." She pointed at my calculations on the scratch paper. I froze. In an exam room, an invigilator would never spontaneously prompt a candidate like that. "Is there a problem? I suggest you recalculate it once more." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to attract the attention of those nearby. I glanced forward. 2 candidates had already turned their heads. I looked back down at my work and reread the question. My solution was not wrong. I confirmed that it's correct. The invigilator frowned, stood there for a moment longer, and then walked away. I continued working. When I reached the fill-in-the-blank section, the same invigilator returned. She stood beside me, staring fixedly at my answer sheet for over 10 seconds before bending down to whisper, "You haven't filled in the bubble correctly here. The machine might not read it." She pointed at the bubble for question 15. I looked down. It was perfectly filled. I had taken countless mock exams and had never filled out a bubble incorrectly. "Thank you, miss. I've checked it. There is no issue." When she stood back up, her expression was rather unpleasant. I continued my exam. But after she walked away, I began piecing the thoughts together. My homeroom teacher couldn't enter the exam room, but she still had ways to exert influence from the outside. The invigilators for the various rooms were drawn from different schools, assigned just days before the exam. I couldn't possibly know their relationships, but she had taught in this district for years. Knowing a few people was completely normal. All it took was a passed-in message, and the invigilators would pay extra attention to me, a student who had already been slapped with a suspicious label. I took a deep breath and pulled my focus back to the exam. The math exam concluded relatively smoothly without any major incidents, but I was slower than usual. For 10 minutes after every question, I double-checked my work to ensure there were no errors. Back at the hotel that night, my father called. "1-1, I found out. Lin Min's boyfriend is named Song Ming, working at the District Education Bureau. They've been dating for half a year, and recently he's been wanting to break up. Yesterday morning he did come to the school gates, but not to see her. He was delivering documents." I held the phone, remaining silent. "The matter of you being reported as a substitute. I've investigated that too." My father's voice was very calm, but I could still hear the restraint. "The report materials were submitted by a female student in your class named Jang Ruan, along with a few photos claiming the picture on the admission ticket, and the real person didn't match. The examination office followed procedure. They made no mistake. Jang Ruan was a classmate of ours. Her grades were below average, and her family's financial situation was poor. Her mother had been chronically ill for years, and her father worked as a construction worker. The homeroom teacher once said she probably wouldn't go to university. Her family couldn't afford it. Why did she do it? Lin Min sought her out, my father said. The details are still unclear, but we can confirm Lin Min is the one behind it. I closed my eyes. My homeroom teacher had chosen the right person. Jiang Ruan didn't intend to go to college, so she didn't care about the exam. She lacked money, so she could be bought. In class, she was practically invisible. If the matter was exposed, everyone would just think she was pitiful, merely being used. Perhaps even she herself didn't view this as a serious offense. To her, reporting a classmate might just be doing the teacher a favor in exchange for some small benefit. Dad, how do you plan to handle this? Wait until you finish your exams. Just focus on testing for now. We'll deal with everything else later. I hung up and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside in the hallway, I could hear parents talking on their phones. From the adjacent room came the continuous sound of running water. I thought of Jiang Ruan. She always sat in the very last row against the wall. The books on her desk perpetually piled high. When she entered the classroom, she would lower her head behind that stack of books, neither listening to lectures nor chatting. During breaks, she never went anywhere, just sitting in her seat sometimes, napping, sometimes just sitting still. Throughout our entire senior year, I had spoken less than 10 sentences to her. The homeroom teacher chose her for a reason. No one noticed what Jiang Ruan did, just as no one noticed the desk always piled high with books in the corner of the classroom. The next morning was the comprehensive science humanities exam. Before entering the exam room, the supervising teacher pulled me aside again and whispered, "I've spoken with the examination office. I'll be keeping a close eye on you today. Nothing will happen." I said thank you. The comprehensive exam had 35 multiple choice questions. I worked very fast, finishing in under 20 minutes. The free response section also went smoothly. Analyzing historical and political texts wasn't difficult, and the geography chart question was even easier than usual. As I worked on the 10th free response question, someone appeared at the door again. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat. It was that same staff member in the white shirt. He walked up to the invigilator and whispered a few words. The invigilator looked toward me, then shook his head. The man spoke some more, and the invigilator shook his head again. Finally, the man left. The hand I used to hold my pen slowly relaxed. The supervising teacher speaking to the examination office beforehand had indeed worked. But I knew very well that this time, my teacher had helped block it for me. Without him, that person would have called me out again, presenting a different excuse, a different suspicion. My homeroom teacher wouldn't stop. She had gone all in on me. If she couldn't break me during these 2 days of exams, she would be the one facing the consequences once it was over. Therefore, she would definitely strike again. I pulled my thoughts back to the exam paper. The comprehensive exam ended, and everything went smoothly. The afternoon was the English exam, the final subject. Before entering, the supervising teacher sought me out again. This time, his expression was no longer relaxed. "Su-won, listen to me." He lowered his voice. "Someone reported that you showed signs of cheating during yesterday's math exam. The examination office has pulled the security footage from your room to investigate." The blood in my veins felt like it was freezing. "Camera footage? I've watched it, you didn't cheat. But the examination office still has to follow full procedure. They might need you to cooperate and provide a statement. Rest assured, I'll try my best to get you into the exam first, and we'll deal with it afterward." He turned and went to find the chief invigilator. I stood at the door of the exam room, watching the stream of candidates going in and out, a sense of disbelief rising in my chest. 2 days, 4 exams, and there was an issue with every single one. I didn't know how far the investigation into Jiang Ruan's report had gotten, but regardless of the result, the homeroom teacher could always arrange someone else. She didn't need to actually invalidate my results. She merely needed to make the examination office continuously investigate me, continuously delay my time, continuously interrupt my rhythm. If repeated enough times, I would naturally lose control. The chief invigilator walked over, exchanged a few words with the supervising teacher, and stood in front of me. "Su-won, we've reviewed the camera footage from yesterday's exam room. We found no issues. However, the whistleblower just provided additional materials. You need to cooperate with us to make a formal record after the exam is over. For now, go in and take your test. We'll talk afterward." I nodded and walked into the room. English was my weakest subject, not because my scores were low, but because they were inconsistent. When I performed well, I could score over 130. When I was off, I might only scrape past 110. The listening section began. I put on my headphones, closed my eyes, and focused on the audio. Passages 1, 2, and 3 were perfectly clear. By passage 4, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Could the homeroom teacher have messed with my headphones too? The moment that thought surfaced, it couldn't be extinguished. I blinked, pressing my fingernails deep into my palms, forcing myself to stay alert. Passages 5, 6, 7. The listening section ended. I moved on to reading comprehension. Passage 1, Passage 2, Passage 3. By Passage 4, my hands started to tremble again. Not out of fear, but exhaustion. Since yesterday, my nerves had been stretched taut. Every time someone appeared at the door, every time an invigilator came close, every time the loudspeaker crackled, my heart seized. That state had lasted for 2 full days. Lin Min understood all too well how to bury a student like me, regardless of how smart or resilient I was. I put my pen down, closed my eyes, and took 3 deep breaths, then resumed working. Just as I finished the fill-in-the-blank section, the loudspeaker sounded. 15 minutes left. I still hadn't written the essay. The English writing task was only about 100 words, usually taking me 10 minutes. But my hands were shaking, my handwriting was crooked, and I had to correct myself multiple times. When it was time to collect the papers, I just barely finished the very last letter. The moment I set my pen down, the bell rang. I let go of my pen and exhaled. It was over. All the exams were finally over. In the exam room, some people cheered, some packed their bags, some broke down crying. I put my pens into my pouch one by one, my movements sluggish, as if all my strength had been drained. Stepping out of the exam room, the sunlight was blinding. The school gates were packed with people. Parents holding flowers, holding banners, raising their phones to take pictures. People were hugging, crying, laughing. I walked through the crowd to the side of the road and called my dad. The phone was picked up before the first ring finished. I'm across from the gate. Black car. Come over. I hung up and crossed the street. A black car was parked by the curb. My dad was sitting in the back seat. The window rolled halfway down. He is a businessman, a man of his word. My stubborn, unyielding personality takes after him by at least 70%. I opened the door and got in. A blast of cold air from the AC hit me, making me shiver slightly. My dad looked at me but didn't say anything. I remained silent too. The car was quiet for a while. Didn't finish the essay? He asked. I finished it, but the conclusion was rushed, so I didn't do it well. What about math? Interrupted once by the invigilator, lost a few minutes. Comprehensive essay wasn't great. English handwriting was messy. My dad nodded. The matter with Zhang Ruan has been fully investigated. He pulled out a document folder beside him and offered it. Lin Min gave her 2,000 yuan, enough to pay for her mother's medicine this month. She told her to write a report letter and attach 3 photos, claiming the picture on your admission ticket didn't match. Zhang Ruan saved screenshots of their chat, and there's a record of the bank transfer. The evidence is solid. I looked at the folder. Is she willing to testify? Not yet. She said she wasn't acting voluntarily. When Lin Min approached her, she claimed it was just for show and wouldn't actually affect your exam. Zhang Ruan didn't know a report would trigger an investigation. Nor did she know it would delay your time. Lin Min tricked her. The exam regulations Lin Min showed her were forged. I stayed quiet for a moment. I knew Zhang Ruan's grades. They weren't enough for a good university. Her family's financial situation also didn't allow her to continue studying. Dad, help me pass a message to Zhang Ruan, I said. Whether she provides this evidence or not doesn't matter. I have plenty of ways to drag Lin Min into the light. But when that happens, Lin Min will definitely pin all the blame on her. Now, the choice is Zhang Ruan's. Either become an accomplice, or hand over all the chat logs and transfer records to the Education Bureau and the police, and write a full statement. As for her tuition to retake the year, I will help her. I paused for a second. Tell her that I believe she can pass the exam. My dad studied me, finally smiled, and nodded. All right. He picked up his phone and sent a text. The car began to roll forward. I leaned back into the seat and closed my eyes. When the car stopped at an intersection, I opened my eyes and saw a female student in uniform sitting by a flower bed on the side of the road, crying. Beside her was a middle-aged woman holding a bouquet of flowers, awkwardly patting her back to comfort her. I didn't know why she was crying. Maybe she didn't do well on the exam. Maybe the accumulated pressure had broken her. Or maybe it was because she finally didn't have to force herself to hold on anymore. After 5 o'clock this afternoon, all candidates became the same kind of people. Those who were liberated, and those who pretended to be liberated. The car continued driving, turning onto a smaller road. I closed my eyes again. The image of my homeroom teacher standing at the school gates appeared in my mind. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Her voice low and cold. "Serves you right." I would remember that phrase, right up until she paid back everything she owed. I didn't go home that night. My dad took me to the district education bureau. There were 7 people in the conference room. The deputy director, the head of admissions, the head of examinations, the head of the disciplinary committee, and 2 others my dad said were from the disciplinary inspection commission. Jiang Ruan was also there. She sat in the corner, head bowed, hands twisted together, her knuckles stark white. I presented the entire sequence of events, from the admission ticket being withheld, to the deliberate delay at the gates, to the false report of a substitute test taker, then the abnormal attention during the math exam, and the camera check during the English exam. My voice was steady, like giving a business report, but the atmosphere in the room grew increasingly heavy. The deputy director continuously drank water. The moment his cup was empty, it was refilled. The head of admissions looked grim, because the investigation process fell under his jurisdiction. Even though they followed the rules, they had still been weaponized. The head of the disciplinary committee took notes non-stop. It was Jiang Ruan's turn to testify. Her voice was very small. Ms. Lin said it was just for show, that it wouldn't really affect Suwan's exam. The investigation would only happen after the exam, so it wouldn't impact her testing time. After the truth came out, I would just have to write a self-criticism. But I was only thinking about getting my mom's treatment continued this month. She lowered her head, her voice trembling. She said Suwan's family has connections, so even if she was reported, they could handle it. She gave me a template, told me to copy it, and attach the photos. She also transferred 2,000 yuan to me. The head of the disciplinary committee asked, "Where are the chat logs?" Jiang Ruan took out her phone. On the screen was the entire chat history with Lin Min. From the initial probing to the arrangements, to the transfer. Every single message was intact, including the claim that even with money, my family would be useless, because the exam room only follows the rules. Including the sentence, "If you're not taking the college entrance exam, you have nothing to fear." Including the words, 2,000 yuan is enough for your mother's medicine. You surely don't want to be selfish and watch your mother die in front of you, do you? Other than me, no one can help you right now. The conference room was silent for a long time. The deputy director set his water cup down, his voice deep. "We will handle this with the utmost severity." My dad looked at him but didn't speak. I also kept quiet. The phrase utmost severity means different things to different people. To others, it might just mean a warning, a demerit, a transfer. To my dad, it meant absolute ruin. It was almost 11 o'clock when we left the education bureau. Jiang Ruan stood at the door and called out to me. She was wearing her faded school uniform, her hair tied back tightly, tear streaks still visible on her face. "Suwan." I stopped. She lowered her head, her lips moving but failing to form words. After a long while, she finally spoke. "Suwan, I'm sorry. I know you won't believe me, but I withdrew the report right after I sent the screenshot to Lin Min to prove I did it. I also returned the money to her. I just didn't expect her to forge my name and send that document directly to the test center herself." I looked at her. She stood under the street lamp, her shadow stretching her thin frame. I remembered how she looked in class. Always in the back row, always silent, always with her head down. She was chosen not because she was malicious, but because she was poor. 2,000 yuan to her was a month's food, half a month's medicine for her mother, 10 days of her father hauling bricks at a construction site. To Lin Min, 2,000 yuan was just 2 meals out. I nodded. "Jiang Ruan, I know about this. When I checked the transfer history to find evidence, I already knew. What I'm curious about is just now. Why didn't you mention that?" Jiang Ruan stayed silent, but I could guess the reason. She was forcing herself to pay the price. The price for agreeing to do something that violated her moral compass. The price for failing to help her mother. Finally, I asked one question. "Jiang Ruan, Do you want to go to university? At my question, she raised her head, a sliver of light in her eyes. I will sponsor you, I said. Tuition for a retake year, and tuition plus living expenses for 4 years of university. But you have to do 2 things. Jiang Ruan looked at me blankly. What do you want me to do? First, get accepted into a top-tier university. Second, from now on, never do something against your conscience like this again. She stood stunned for a long time, then nodded forcefully, tears falling once more. I didn't say anything else. I turned and got into the car. I would make sure Jiang Ruan paid whatever price she needed to pay. But right now, I couldn't forget the look in her eyes as she sat in the corner of the classroom, gazing at the plane trees outside the window. As the car started, I looked through the rearview mirror. Jiang Ruan was still standing there, the street lamp stretching her shadow very, very long. Do you really want to sponsor her? My dad asked. Yes. She almost ruined you. She wasn't the mastermind, I said. Lin Min was. If I had been in her shoes, perhaps I would have hesitated too. My dad didn't say any more. The car merged onto the highway. The city's nightscape rushed past the windows. The streetlights receded row by row, like an endless ribbon of light. The next morning, my dad received a call from the Education Bureau. The initial results regarding Lin Min were out. During the National College entrance examination period, she had abused her position to maliciously withhold a candidate's admission ticket, delaying their entry into the exam room. Concurrently, she had incited a student to fabricate facts and falsely report substitute test-taking. This was a severe violation of professional teaching ethics and national examination regulations. The Education Bureau decided to revoke her teaching credentials, expel her from the civil service, and issue a public criticism. This was the initial result my father had anticipated. Next was the disciplinary committee's matter. Whether Lin Min's behavior during the reporting process was suspected of abuse of power and obstructing. The order of examinations required further investigation. If verified, she could be handed over to judicial authorities. Hearing this, I only said one thing. What about her boyfriend? I think he's involved. Why are you so sure? Because when the examination office initiated the investigation, retrieving my medical exam form took less than 10 minutes. The normal procedure takes at least half an hour. I looked at my dad. Someone in the system had already prepared it, pulled the file in advance, and was just waiting for the report documents to arrive, before immediately triggering the check. My dad narrowed his eyes. Have you told anyone about this? At the examination office, I saw the female teacher operating the computer with my own eyes. The system showed the file was generated at 8:45, while the report materials were only submitted at 8:50. My dad smiled. I knew he was pleased that, even in that situation, I had maintained the composure to observe. Are you sure? I'm sure. My dad picked up his phone and made a call. Old CHU. Help me check something. Song Ming at the District Education Bureau. Around 8:45 yesterday morning, did he log into the examination system and pull Su Wan's medical examination file? The other end replied briefly. He hung up. We'll have the results tomorrow. I didn't ask further. The next afternoon, the results were in. At 8:45, Song Ming had indeed logged into the examination system and retrieved my medical file. Every action was logged in the system's journal. He didn't have the clearance to access this information, but he used a subordinate's account, someone who was on maternity leave, whose account he had kept. Song Ming was suspended pending investigation. The Lin Min scandal continued to spread. My dad compiled the entire sequence of events and sent it to internal chat groups within the education system. It wasn't made public, supposedly just exchanging work information. But once news like this leaks, it cannot be contained. In just half a day, the entire city's education system knew. Someone posted it on their WeChat moments with a brief caption. Homeroom teacher withholds admission ticket. Incites student to make false report. The shares multiplied. From the education sector, it spread to parents and then to local media. That evening, a reporter from the TV station called my dad. He declined the interview but provided one name. Lin Min. The reporters started digging into her background. She had taught at this school for 6 years, and before that, 4 years at a town school. 10 years of teaching, receiving good evaluations every year. Last year, she was even voted an outstanding teacher in the district. A person like that had committed such an act. The news was broadcast the next morning. It didn't name the school or the student. that Lin Min's name, photo, and position were laid bare. The school website had taken down her information overnight, but screenshots had already spread. Her image was widely shared online. The comment sections exploded. Some asked if a person like this deserved to be a teacher. Some demanded a reinvestigation of her past. Some argued that withholding an admission ticket was an intentional act to destroy a student's future. I read through every single comment, then put my phone down and started checking my answers against the official keys. For literature, the multiple-choice questions were all correct. The classical poetry fill-in-the-blanks had no errors. I lost 2 points on modern reading comprehension, and 1 point on classical translation. The essay couldn't be accurately verified, so I estimated a deduction of about 8 to 10 points. My total literature score would be around 125, 10 points lower than usual. For math, the multiple-choice and fill-in-the-blanks were all correct. The free response only had a deduction in the final step due to formatting. Expected score, 148. For comprehensive, the multiple-choice were all correct. Free response deductions would be around 10 points. Total, roughly 250. For English, I got 1 reading comprehension wrong, 2 fill-in-the-blanks wrong, and minus 5 points on the essay. Around 125. My estimated total score was roughly 650. This score wasn't enough to get into the absolute top universities, but it was still enough for a very good one. I stared at that number for a long time. If it hadn't been for Lin Min, I could have scored 30 points higher. 30 points were enough to step onto a completely different tier, but I only held on to that thought for a few seconds before extinguishing it. The best way to confront someone isn't to repeat what they did, but to live better. To do that, I had to ensure she never had the chance to stand up again. I picked up my phone and texted my dad. The matter of Jang Ruan retaking the year. Please arrange it soon, Dad. The reply came back very quickly. Done. On the 3rd day, I went to Jang Ruan's house. She lived in an old neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, on the 5th floor with no elevator. The corridor was cluttered with junk, the walls plastered with ads. The lights were broken, so I had to use my phone's flashlight. Jang Ruan opened the door. She was wearing an old t-shirt, her eyes slightly puffy. You? What are you doing here? Coming to visit you. She stood frozen for a moment before stepping aside. The apartment wasn't big, 2 bedrooms and a living room. In the living room sat an old sofa and a battered TV. On the table were medicines and medical record books. A smell of herbal medicine wafted from the kitchen. Her mother walked out of her room, her complexion sallow, her frame emaciated, having to lean against the wall to walk. Mum, this is my classmate, Sue Won. Mother Zhao smiled at me, a forced smile, her eyes holding something indescribable. I sat down on the sofa. Jang Ruan poured me a glass of water in a faded plastic cup printed with a cartoon rabbit. I've spoken to your dad about you retaking the year. Jang Ruan sat opposite me, her hands resting on her knees. He said he can arrange for me to study at No One High School, waive all tuition fees, and give me 1,000 yuan a month for living expenses. Yes, no. One high school. I've already asked around about No One High School for you. Their retake classes have the highest acceptance rate. Last year, the rate of students getting into top-tier universities was 70%. Jang Ruan lowered her head and remained silent for a long time. Why are you helping me? Because you're not a bad person, I said. You just made a wrong choice. Everyone makes wrong choices, but not everyone gets the chance to choose again. I'm giving you this chance. She looked up, her eyes turning red. Soo-won, but you must remember, this chance is given by me. If you retake the year and still amount to nothing, I will not continue to sponsor you. If you get into university and just coast through life, I will not continue to sponsor you either. I'm not doing charity. I am investing. I know. Good. I stood up, ready to leave. As I reached the door, Jang Ruan called out to me. Soo-won. I turned my head. The matter with Ms. Ya? Lin, I heard about it. She bit her lip. She deserves it. I said nothing. But I want to tell you something. Jang Ruan's voice trembled slightly. When she sought me out, she said something. Soo-won has had it too easy. From childhood to adulthood, she's better than everyone else at everything. Her family has money. Her grades are excellent, and she's beautiful. She said the heavens were unfair, and she wanted to even the score on behalf of heaven. I stood at the door looking at Jeong Ruan. To even the score on behalf of heaven. I repeated the phrase, then chuckled softly. Lin Min hadn't lost her mind over love, nor was it a moment of momentary folly. She simply couldn't stand the sight of someone surpassing her. Who her boyfriend looked at didn't matter. She just needed an excuse for her malice. Thank you. I finished speaking and left. When I reached the stairs, the corridor light flickered on and off. I walked down step by step, the light flickering. In my head, that phrase repeated. To even the score on behalf of heaven. I am the eldest daughter of the wealthy Su family. My future is boundless, but my pressure is equally boundless. The number of exam papers I've completed, the number of words I've practiced, have never been less than anyone else's. People's backgrounds may be unfair, but time is fair, and so are the results. 7 days later, the exam scores were announced. My total score was 653. Literature 127, Math 149, Comprehensive 251, English 126. My provincial ranking was 1,201. A result neither low nor high. My dad looked at the transcript and simply said, "Not bad." My mom rushed back from out of town and hugged me, crying, saying she should have been by my side during the exam. I told her it was fine. The Lin Min scandal circulated online for a week before gradually dying down. The disciplinary decision was officially announced. Expelled from the civil service, teaching credentials revoked. Permanently barred from employment in the sector. Song Ming was also fired. The reason given was violation of account usage regulations and leaking candidate information. Neither of them could ever remain in this system again. But I felt it still wasn't enough. My dad also felt it wasn't enough. He spoke to a lawyer on the phone. She delayed my daughter's college entrance exam by an hour. She couldn't finish her literature essay. She lost at least 30 points in total. Do you know what 30 points means? That's a drop of at least 2,000 places in the provincial ranking. A gap of 2,000 places. No amount of money can buy that back. The lawyer said that legally speaking, it would be very difficult to pursue criminal liability against her. My dad said, "I don't need her to go to jail. I just need her to permanently never be able to stand up in this industry." The lawyer said that had already been achieved. My dad said, "Not enough." He hung up the phone and looked at me. "What do you want to happen to her?" I thought for a long time, my fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. "Make her lose everything," I said. "Not just her job, not just her reputation, but everything." Dad, use the Lin Min incident to dig deep into every student she's taught over the past 10 years. Every parent you can contact. I do not believe I was the only one she's ever targeted. 3 days later, the results were uncovered. The things Lin Min had done over the past 10 years were far worse than I had imagined. During her 4 years teaching at the town school, she had accepted gifts from parents totaling no less than 100,000 yuan. After transferring to the city, her behavior grew increasingly severe. Accepting gifts turned into extortion. Parents who didn't pay up would see their children moved to the back of the class, denied leadership roles, constantly summoned for meetings, forced to write self-criticisms, or even suspended. One parent cried over the phone as she recounted how her daughter, because they didn't give a gift, was berated for an entire class period and called a useless poor kid. The girl subsequently transferred schools. Her grades plummeted, and she only scored a little over 400 points on the college entrance exam. Another parent revealed that Lin Min forced students to buy study materials specifically designated by her. Twice a semester, at least 200 yuan per student each time. A class of 46 students meant over 9,000 yuan collected at once. Almost 20,000 a year. All that money went straight into her own pockets. Furthermore, she abused her position to sell students' personal information. Home addresses, phone numbers, and parents' workplaces were sold to tutoring centers for 50 yuan per piece of information. A single graduating class brought in over 2,000 yuan. It wasn't that these things hadn't been reported before, but every time. It was swept under the rug because her brother-in-law was a department head in the district education bureau. Every complaint letter was intercepted. This time, it couldn't be intercepted, because my dad wasn't an ordinary parent. He is the chairman of the Su Education Group. He compiled all the evidence into a comprehensive report and sent it directly to the director of the City Education Bureau. A complaint letter can be suppressed. A formal report from him cannot. The City Education Bureau held meetings through the night. The very next day, a joint investigation team was established. The department head at the District Education Bureau, Lin Min's brother-in-law, was suspended pending investigation. Lin Min's case escalated from an internal education system issue to a criminal one, involving suspicions of breaking the law, demanding bribes, accepting bribes, and trafficking citizens' personal information. Any single one of these charges was enough to make her drink a bitter cup. The evening the news broke, I sat on the balcony enjoying the breeze. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I picked it up. Suwon, it's Ms. Lin. I paused for a moment, pulled the phone away from my ear and glanced at the screen. A local number, unsaved. What do you want to say? I want to beg you. Her voice trembled, completely different from the gloating tone she used at the school gates. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that. But could you please put in a word with your father and ask him to let me go? I can kneel before you, I can publicly apologize. I can do anything. Anything. Then tell me, why did you do it? The other end of the line was silent for a long time. Because I was jealous of you. You have money, you have grades, you have a bright future. You have everything. I have nothing. I've taught for 10 years, making 4,000 yuan a month. I can't even afford to buy a house. My boyfriend wanted to break up with me. He said he didn't want to spend his life with a poor school teacher. That morning he came to the school. I thought he was looking for me, but he just kept staring at you. Her voice suddenly turned shrill. He said that girl was so beautiful, big eyes, pale skin, and exceptionally good aura. He said if he were 10 years younger, he would definitely pursue you. I held the phone, not replying. In that moment I thought, why? Lin Min's voice shook. Why do you get to have everything, even someone else's boyfriend? I knew you didn't do it. I knew you didn't even know what he looked like, but I couldn't control myself. I just wanted to destroy you. Even if you only lost one exam subject, it would have been enough for me. Is it enough for you now? She burst into tears, sobbing violently. I remained unmoved. Ms. Lin, you've taught for 10 years and harmed so many people. You know this yourself. I said, I wasn't the first, but I will be the last. If it hadn't been me that day, and an ordinary student whose ticket you withheld, whom you falsely reported, would that student have had a chance? Lin Min remained silent. They wouldn't, I said. They would have lost their literature paper, lost 150 points, failed to get into university, and been forced to retake the year. Their family would have to bear another year's burden, their future ruined. And you? Would you have regretted it? No. Therefore, Lin Min, the words you said that day I now return to you. Whatever you suffer now, serves you right. I hung up the phone and blocked the number. The wind on the balcony blew fiercely, whipping my hair up to cover my face. I leaned back in my chair and tilted my head up to look at the sky. The next morning, my dad and I went to Jiang Ruan's house. Jiang Ruan had already finished packing. An old suitcase and a backpack, both stuffed to the brim. Her mother stood at the door, holding Jiang Ruan's hands, tears flowing incessantly. Jiang Ruan was crying too. The two stood in the hallway, hugging and crying for a long time. I stood to the side, waiting, not rushing them. When Jiang Ruan got into the car, she turned to look at her mother one last time, then looked at me. Suwon. Yeah. I will definitely get into a top-tier university, and I will definitely pay this money back to you. I know. As the car pulled away, Jiang Ruan pressed her face against the window, still looking back, until her mother's silhouette shrank to a small dot and finally vanished into the dark hallway. When she turned back, tears fell again. I handed her some tissues. Just let her cry it all out. That's enough. At one high school, I helped her with the enrollment procedures. The homeroom teacher for the retake class was a Miss Liu, in her 40s, wearing glasses and speaking with crisp efficiency. Jiang Ruan. What was your score last year? 412. Ms. Liu frowned, a bit low. But retaking a year and increasing by 70 or 80 points is feasible. With effort, you could get into a second-tier university. Jiang Ruan lowered her head. I stood beside her and spoke up. She needs to get into a top-tier university. Ms. Liu looked at me, then at Jiang Ruan. A top-tier university. 412 last year is over 100 points away from the cutoff. Raising it by that much in 1 year isn't impossible, but it's incredibly difficult. That's exactly why she has to try, I said. She can do it. Ms. Liu didn't say anything more. She signed the form and handed over the dorm room key. Jiang Ruan took it, looking at me. Suwon, do you really think I can do it? I told you, this is an investment. I don't invest where there are no returns. Jiang Ruan bit her lip, nodded, and we left one high school. My dad was already waiting in the car. I got in, and he handed me a bottle of water. As the car rolled forward, I leaned back against the seat, watching the scenery retreat outside the window. The exam was over, and the matter with Linmin was mostly concluded. That some things would not disappear. Like the incomplete conclusion of my essay that day. Like the 1 hour that was stolen from me. Like the image of Jiang Ruan standing under the street lamp saying she was sorry. These things would remain. But it's okay, I will keep moving forward. Overcome and overcome again. Next time, no one will be able to stop me. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. We deeply appreciate all your comments, feedback and thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.